Okay, so just by looking at this number, we know that the track is probably pretty good, but we have to address some of the problems. And to do that, I want to go full screen by pressing F2 and then having a very close look at all these trackers. One area that I want to pay special attention to is this one. If you scrub through the shot, you can see that here are some 3D points that seem to be behind that object, and in fact they are. And that is a very, very common problem, that if there are areas where one object covers the background and there's a tracker in the background, then in the moment that this tracker is revealed, it can happen that there is some problem. Let's zoom in here by pressing your right mouse button and then dragging. Now let's concentrate on this tracker here. By the way, up here in the timeline you can see some blue and black dots, and that means this tracker has been tracked from this frame to the end, and every black spot is a keyframe. So it has on every spot one keyframe. But anyway, let's concentrate here. You can see this tracker is tracking the center of that white spot. But when we go frame by frame in this direction, and you can do that by pressing the S key, so S goes backwards and D goes forward, which is pretty cool because you don't have to use the arrow keys. Excuse me, you don't have to use the arrow keys, so you don't have to take your right hand off your mouse and go to the keyboard. You can just use your left hand on the keyboard, press S and D. Right, you're seeing this is tracking the center of that white spot. Now that we go in the area where that object starts to cover that spot, the center will of course look different to Synth Eyes, because that white spot is now smaller, because we only see the right half of that. So there are some frames where suddenly we first are tracking this area, and now that more and more of this white spot is revealed, the tracker slides into position. So there are some problematic frames. And of course this will have an influence of your overall solution. So what you can do is you can just, because we have so many trackers, we can just delete that by hitting the backspace key. Okay, let's move on and see if there are some more of these problematic errors. For example, this one. You can see there is that yellow cross, that 3D point, and there's that green square. And that green square slides into position, just as this tracker has done a moment ago. So when you select this and zoom in, you can see that there is some bright spot that this tracker is following, but when this white spot gets covered by this object, the white spot looks of course very different to Synth Eyes, and so we have a sliding tracker here. In fact, it's sliding quite a few frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, almost 8 frames until this tracker has reached its position, where it is of course tracking very nicely. So there will be some error, so we can also delete that. And these are just some of the issues that you can have when you're tracking with an automatic track. Okay, now we could go over each and every frame, each and every tracker, but that would probably take a while. Now there are some tools that can make your life easier. For example, you can right click and then go to View, Show Tracker Trails. And you can also enable or disable the 3D points by hitting J, or show the trackers by hitting Control J. Okay, J will disable the 3D points, and Control J will disable the trackers. But let's just enable the tracker trails. Here you can see that every tracker has a trail that goes in the past and in the future. And if you look, and if you see one of these trails suddenly doing something that the others are not doing, or maybe there's a spike in the trail, then you know there is a problem and you have to fix it. But also this can be time consuming and tedious, so maybe let's do something a little bit more automated.